Good morning. I'm delighted to be here in my neighborhood. TEDxDonMills happens in Don Mills, that's where I live. And this is an important conversation, so I'm gonna sit down and you and I are gonna have a discussion, I think, on something that is really of significance to leadership everywhere. I wanna make a few arguments with you today. I wanna give you 5 questions to think about and 3 takeaways. The first argument I wanna make is this, that today, globally, leadership is in a crisis of credibility. At the international level, at the national level, at the organizational level, at the team level, and at the individual level. Too many of us who are looking to leaders to create a confluence of conditions under which they can be at their best are being disappointed. And many of us find ourselves in this situation. And good for us. Angela Davis, I think, epitomizes the angst of a generation when she says, I'm done with this idea of accepting the things that I can't change. Instead, we need to start changing things we can no longer accept. If you think about this credibility gap that leadership actually exists in today, we need not only have a conversation about what needs to change, but in my view, the second argument I want to make with you is we need to reframe leadership for impact. What do I mean by that? As leaders, let me pause here for a second. I don't just mean leaders positionally. You don't have to have a title that says leader within it. Anyone who makes decisions that has an impact on the lives of other people is therefore a leader. We need to reframe leadership for impact. And all of us need to ask the question that if we're serious about designing tomorrow, who are we developing to take on this new mantra of leadership? So what's that about? To me, this new mantra is really about saying that we have limited leadership to a particular set of attributes, behaviors, and mindsets. And it's time for us to shake that. The funny thing is, most of these definitions of leadership are self-imposed. How many of us have heard the expression, think outside the box, right? I heard that and I was told, think outside of the box. And I was like, oh my gosh, which box am I stuck in? Who put me there? Or at least I hope the box is brown on the outside. As you can tell, I'm down with brown, right? So here's the root of that expression. How do we connect these 9 dots by only using 4 lines? And here's one potential solution. If you look at that closely, you have to go outside of this mental model that you have, that somehow you have to stay within that square. And that's the first thing I want to say. If we're serious about leadership, we need to reframe that and say every leader, anyone who makes decisions that impact other people, needs to ask the question, how do I insist on impact? How do I show up in a way that those who are looking to me to make a difference are impacted positively? Buckminster Fuller, systems thinker, architect, reminded us that we are called to be architects of the future and not its victims. Now, if you were here today at TEDxDonMills, I'd quarrel with him a little bit. I'm not so sure we need to be architects, but I think we need to be designers of the future. Because to me, design is all about iteration. And at the end of every iteration, what do we get? A prototype. I want to say to myself and to everyone here, we need to prototype the better versions of ourselves as leaders. So what not to do? What not to do is to think about leadership as a static set of activities. Every morning I get up at 4:30, have a double shot of espresso, so I can say the name right of this colleague of mine. His name is, wait for it, Giampiero Petrieri. It's a tongue twister of an Italian name. Swell guy though. He teaches leadership at INSEAD, at Fontainebleau outside of Paris. And Giampiero reminds us that leadership is about 4 enablers of 3 behaviors. He says leadership is about the courage, pause. The courage to do what? The courage to step outside of that box. Then he says leadership is about capacity. None of us are born with it all. Yes, I know, not even I. Thirdly, he says leadership is about curiosity. Leaders are eternally curious about how people see things differently than them, not just like them. And lastly, he says leadership is about commitment. Leaders who actually earn the respect and the integrity of others are the ones who say what they will do, and they actually do what they said they would do. So these four enablers do what? They enable three behaviors: to work with, to learn from, and to give voice to the other. To work with. If we don't have the ability to work with others, particularly those that think and live differently than us, we're always going to leave value on the table. Learn from. If we don't have the humility to learn from other people, we will always be self-contained in our own mental models. And lastly, to give voice to the other. Folks, let me ask you, who do you think he's talking about when he says the other? Who's the other to whom we must give voice? I'm going to suggest the other is anyone who is not us. And leaders who do this well are individuals who can step out of themselves. Why does that matter? Let me show you an example. This is W.E.B. Du Bois. He's the first African American to get a PhD from Harvard University. And when asked about his experience of his alma mater, he said, "I was in Harvard, not of it." Listen to that again. I was in Harvard, but not of it. What do you hear in that statement? What I hear is lament. What might have been. And there's nothing more devastating to impact than that lament. What might have been. I want to say to you that leadership done right is understanding this fundamental principle, that leadership work is people work. If you can't love them, you can't lead them. One more time. Leadership work is people work. If you can't love them, you can't lead them. Asterisk. Now here's the asterisk. I'm not suggesting you have to love everyone that you lead, but I am going to insist that in everyone that we lead, there must be something that we love to see grow and to develop. And that takes curiosity. What do I mean by that? The key to enabling purpose, to enabling impact, is to put purpose before process. What's your purpose as a leader? What does the world lose out on if you don't show up in the way that you're truly capable? What does your team, your organization, your society, your neighborhood become if everyone who has capabilities and aspirations are not given opportunities to exploit them meaningfully for impact? Purpose also is a unifying force. It's that oxygen that we all need to enable contribution by anyone and everyone. So I mentioned to you, I've got 5 questions for you. Here they are. Question number 1. Why does every story matter? This is Nelson Mandela, Madiba known to many who loved him. When he was imprisoned in South Africa, the prison guards spoke a language he didn't understand. It was Afrikaans. And in his letters to his family, he said, "I refuse to be imprisoned physically and mentally. I can no longer bear this idea that I cannot understand the conversations of the ones who are standing outside of the prison bars." He learned Afrikaans while he was in prison. When people said to him, "Why would you do that?" his response was, "How else would I teach them about the importance of African liberation?" And in fact, when he became the first president of South Africa post-apartheid, he had a multicultural, multilingual bodyguard team for that reason. Every story matters because everyone values their story to be shared. Question number 2. What's the invitation that we're making as leaders? Daily. This is His Highness Prince Aga Khan. And the invitation that he's making, for which he's been recognized here in Canada, is the invitation to enshrine pluralism. Pluralism is going beyond just accepting people for who they are, but to create a set of conditions under which people can make active contribution through the source and center of being. Question 3. You can tell I'm getting hungry. How do you set the table? So it's one thing to set the invitation out. How do you set the table? Well, you set the table in a way that you really think through who your guests are going to be. Look at this image behind me of Mother Teresa. What do you see in that connection between her and the baby she's holding and the nurse to her left? That's a state that I call wonderment. It's an emotional, psychic, and intellectual openness to what might be. We need to set the table for everyone's inclusion in a way that we're curious about how they can fully find themselves welcomed. Question number 4. What's your MO? How do you operate day to day? This is Jane Goodall. Her observational experiment in the Gombe jungle is still the longest running experiment in this kind of science. And she went there not on a whim, in a state of curiosity. But most people don't realize is this: it took her 2 full months to socialize herself to these animals, these primates that she was studying. Our MO needs to understand that simply because we are well-intentioned doesn't mean those that are around us will accept us for who we are. We need to be patient and open and engaging to give them the opportunity for us to earn their trust and their respect. And lastly, how do we get others to commit to courage? In my view, this is the ultimate leadership question. And we need not to go far. This is Terry Fox. And Terry Fox inspires me with an answer, which I think is worth sharing. We inspire confidence in people by living out the courage that we seek from them. Instead of choosing to die at home, when his cancer came back, he chose to take the message out there. So what do we do next? We need to understand that designing tomorrow means the leaders need to do 3 things. 1, 2, and 3. We need to actually embrace discomfort. Can I ask you all to stand, please? I want you, please, to put your hands in front of you and clasp them like this. Do you notice which thumb is on which one? My left thumb is on my right one. If you're like me, put your hand up now. And now, if your right one is on your left one, it is your turn to put your hand up. Hands out again. Jazz hands, jazz hands, jazz hands. Together again. And this time, I want you to put the other thumb on the dominant thumb. You got that? How does that feel? Weird. Thank you. Embrace that discomfort. Sit down. We're not done yet. Sit down. 2 more points. The second thing we need to do to design for tomorrow is we need to go beyond tolerance. Tolerance to me is this. It's me holding my nose and saying this: I don't like you, but I'll put up with you. It's me plugging my nose and saying, I don't like you, but I'll put up with you. Tell me who merely likes to be put up with. Not I, not you, not us. If we set the bar at tolerance, we're setting the bar far too low. And lastly, we need to design from a place of love and not from a place of guilt. And this requires behavioral empathy. And most of us understand the most commonly used expression or metaphor for empathy is to do what? To walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. Well, this is what leaders need to do. They need to actually take their shoes off first. They do. Because our shoes, our experiences, our sense of self, our views of the world hold us back in really understanding the fact that others have a very different experience of the exact same circumstance. Embracing comfort, moving beyond tolerance, and experiencing and living out behavioral empathy will not only make us better leaders, it'll make for a more meaningful and engaged society. And to me, that is what leadership is about. Thank you.